Hey pals, and welcome to your weekly episode of We Read It One Night, the podcast where two sisters get silly and sexy while chatting about romance novels. Today, we have a grand old time discussing listener suggestion, The Heiress's Guide to Deception and Desire by Manda Collins. This book was just pure good vibes from start to finish, with a kidnapping plot and a basically feral cat character thrown in. In other words, it was chef's kiss, a pure delight. Enjoy the show.
Something I was thinking about is the brood to dialogue ratio scale with regards to just books in general. But I feel like in general, the higher the brood to dialogue ratio, the better. I don't know.
I'm gonna need you to expand on that. I don't really understand what you're talking about.
Like the amount of time that people spend brooding versus the amount of time they spend talking.
What is that like? So
I don't
if they
know.
brood more,
yes,
than they talk, it's better.
Yes, the more brooding, the better.
But how do you calculate that?
It's just vibes. You just know. Pining, simmering, staring out of windows correlates.
I feel like that probably correlates to the cat skill a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because I feel like the more broody a character is, the more cat-like. The more likely they are to just sit staring out of windows.
Exactly. Or exactly. And cats don't talk at all, so that's an infinite brood to dialogue scale for any cat. Basically,
they do talk. They meow. They have
what
is it 100 different types of meow? They have a shit ton of different types of meows.
No, I thought adult cats don't usually meow. They only meow at people.
No, but
they don't meow at other cats. They can, but they don't.
No, but they meow at people.
Yeah,
they meow to communicate with people, and they have a bunch of different types of meows. They can vocalize in a lot of different ways, more than dogs can. Way more than dogs can. Dogs don't need to vocalize. They mastered the art of human manipulation thousands of years before cats.
Yeah. Just being super friendly.
Anyway, today we're doing The Heiress's Guide to Deception and Desire by... Do you remember?
Manda Collins.
Manda Collins.
Yeah.
Good for you, Manda. This is her second book in this crime-fighting ladies plus romance book series. But you don't need to read the first book.
I don't know. I mean, are they at all in the first book? Because I was confused, because it seemed like there was a lot more detail that could have been given about all the backstory. Was that not part of it at all?
Okay, so I mean, what are they fucking named? The two main characters are Caroline and Valentine. That's the hero and the heroine. And yeah, Caroline appears, but
Caro.
Caro and Val both appear, but they're very side character. You don't get really any you don't get any extra information about them.
Okay, so we don't find out that they were. We don't know that they were engaged. So it's kind of I feel like that's what's happening with the fucking Langley and Flora in this book. Is there a third book?
I think so. I haven't.
Is it kind of
I mean, I do think Langley and Flora are probably the next couple, but I looked up the next book, and it's on Goodreads, but it doesn't have a title or a summary yet. So.
What I'm saying is, were Caro and Val treated kind of like Langley and Flora? Except I guess Caro would have been a bigger character.
Caro was a little bit of a bigger character in that she helped solve the mystery, but honestly, she wasn't there for most of the time.
Oh, really?
Because it was at a country party. So she only showed up halfway through.
Gotcha. Yeah.
To investigate the murder.
A murder?
It was a serial killer in the first book.
Oh, damn. Wow, that's exciting.
Okay, I mean, we should explain.
Okay.
The premise of the book is that these two ladies, Caro and what's her friend's name?
Kate.
Caro and Kate. Kate owns a newspaper because she was a rich widow, and then obviously she got married again in the first book because that was her book. And there's a serial killer going about, and her friend are Scotland Yard isn't solving this. We're going to take it into our own hands. And they start a column called The Ladies' Guide to Mischief and Mayhem or whatever. And now they have a book club. They've really expanded it. But they just discuss crimes in their column. And they're just two little detectives. And so, the first book, they solved a serial killer case. And Kate is now married to a Scotland Yard sergeant. I don't know. He's like kind of high up in Scotland Yard. You find out that all in this book too. Like that's not like you don't need to read the first book to get that background.
Okay, so I feel like this book was kind of like the
Oh,
central
wait.
conflict.
This was a listener suggestion. I always forget to say.
Nice.
I always write it in my notes and then I
Yeah.
always forget to say it.
Nice, yeah. I feel like the conflict of this book was kind of like Pride and Prejudice-y, except that they gave all of Darcy's like really mean lines to like to Val's dad instead of having Val himself like ever believe that.
I think it was much more so like okay. I mean, I guess I feel like we should give the background. We're just like talking about it, like not. Okay, so Caro and Val, this is like a second chance romance. Caro is basically like her dad's like super rich, but he works for a living. He owns a tin making factory, so even though he's rich, he's still like disgusting. And Val's dad is a duke, and Val is now like the heir to the dukedom because his older brother died recently. His older brother was also kind of a dick, and his dad is also like a classist dick. Basically his whole family is
They're
like
snobs. There's a word for it. It's snobs.
I mean, his older brother, like the more we learn about his older brother, the more I'm like, no, the brother was definitely just a dick. He wasn't even a snob. So basically Val and Caro like met like 5 years ago or something, like a while back. And they like, you know, fell in love and they were two crazy kids.
That's what I was confused about because they're supposed. So when does the first book take place relative to this one? Like how many years before?
It's like a year before. Like it takes place after they've already had a falling out in the first book.
Right. But I was okay because I was confused with the timeline because I thought that they met and like got together during the. It seemed like it was saying it was during the events of the first book. Okay.
No, the first book they're already enemies. Like they're already sniping at each other. Val is Kate's like childhood friend.
Yeah.
So like they already know each other. Then Kate is like separately friends with Caro.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Caro and Val like got together. They were like secretly engaged, but Val is like super bad at standing up to his family. And then his like brother like says something mean about Caro, and like Caro overhears, and Val doesn't defend her. And so Caro's like, I'm not gonna put up with like your family treating me like shit and you like not saying about it. So like,
but in his defense, it was supposed to be a secret that they were engaged, and he like thought. At least that's what he said. Is he thought that it was more important to like keep the secret.
Sure, but like, but what he comes to realize eventually is like he's like I didn't need to reveal our engagement to defend her. He's like,
I don't think he ever says that. That's true, but like I don't.
He
think
does
he ever,
have that. No, I feel like he does. He's like I should have like defended her like regard like. I didn't need to be like she's my fiance. Treat her with respect. Like she should have been treated with respect regardless of whether she was my fiance. It's sort of like I feel like the mindset that he is.
I guess it would have been like since he had no precedent of like standing up to them, it would have been like odd, and it would have been
sure, but yeah, it's just like he's like, oh, okay, like so it wasn't just that you didn't stand up for your fiance; it was the fact that you just like allowed that kind of comment to pass about like anyone. And Caro is like, yeah, I'm not having it, and I do like that they really put most of the blame at Val's door. Because I was really worried because like there are some moments when Caro has like a thought or like Kate like says like, oh, like I shouldn't have been so harsh to judge him. Like I just like I was like, you know, insecure about our relationship. And so like I lashed out and I broke up with him. Like, but it wasn't ever presented as like, oh, that means that like they're sort of equally at fault. While also acknowledging because Val also is like, well, I never did anything that would make you feel secure in our relationship. So like that's why you like, you know what I mean? Like it's still it's very much like I'm glad that they didn't, because I feel like so often these second chance romances, it's presented as like, well, they're both at fault. And like sometimes they really are both at fault, but sometimes I'm like, no, one of you was trash. And one of you needs to make amends and the other one can like apologize for some things, but like you both, you know, one of you needs to apologize more than the other. And like I just get really frustrated, and it's almost always like the man really you know, if it's like an MF couple, like the man really fucked up and the woman like, you know, didn't react in the best way, but like, you know, isn't entirely unjustified. And then like at the end they're both like, oh, I'm so sorry, like they both have like mutual apologies, and I'm like, I mean, like I get why she's apologizing, but also like I really feel like he needed like, you know, these two things are not the same.
Yeah, her growth is more like, and they really didn't throw this in until like the end, but it's more just like, oh, I need to like learn to trust my instincts, like I need to not doubt my instincts or whatever, which I'm not really sure how that's related to like the Val situation, but
because like her initial instincts about Val was that like she liked him and he was good, and then she like started doubting herself. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean that was like this I feel like this description so far makes his book sound like pretty angsty. this book had zero angst. There was never a moment during this book where I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? How are they going to resolve this problem? Like, oh no, like despite the fact that this was like a kidnapping mystery, like romantic suspense, never. And you know what? I loved it. Like I just listened to this book and I was like, no thoughts, just vibes, like the entire time. Like it was really, I was like in a big reading slump and I just like couldn't, like I think after Bridgerton season 2, I was just like, I cannot take any angst right now. And this book was like perfect. It was just absolutely no angst whatsoever. It was
That's
wonderful.
true, but I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen. Like there was definitely, I really like the like mystery thing. I want to read more like this because you get like sort of a double satisfying ending of like both solving the crime and like the romance ending. But I don't know what you mean. Like there was as much suspense as like any other. I don't know. I guess there
I don't
wasn't.
know. There was just, maybe it was just me, but there was just like never, because like there would be like, there were like scenes when like Val and Caro would get in a fight. And usually in romance, like that sort of lasts for a little bit, has lasting repercussions until the very end when it's finally resolved. But it was like Val and Caro would get in a fight. And then like the next page, they'd be like, oh, well, I understand why she felt that way. And like she was just like, you know, reacting to her insecurities. And he was just like, you know, he's still growing and changing. You know what I mean? It was just very like healthy. And it was just so no angst, and I loved it.
I will say that it was like very wholesome, and I don't know if it was just the book or partly just the audiobook narrator's voice that made me think this, but I was just like, until they actually did, I was just like, I cannot see this book containing like sex, period. I just can't see it getting raunchy or like steamy in any way. It just seems so like, I don't know, just like chaste is the, I don't know.
I agree, but even like there, I mean, there is explicit sex in this book,
know.
but even that was like not, I wouldn't call this book steamy.
No,
You know what I
the
mean?
opposite.
It was very like as much as like we talked about how Julia Quinn isn't steamy, like I would say this book is less steamy than Julia Quinn.
Yes, this is like the least, I don't know how to describe it. Like
the least steam in an explicit sex scene that I've ever
partly like the audiobook narrator's voice just making me think of like, I don't even know what, like a school marm who like is just the epitome of like, I don't know, something about it.
And I don't say, I feel like low steam, no angst is often like, those are two like buzzwords that people use to be like, ah, this book sucked. But like they worked really well with this book. Like this book was good because of those things. I was just like I felt like I was skipping the whole book, like in a field of flowers with a basket.
What did you say?
No, I said like low angst, low steam. I feel like a lot, especially in like book talk and bookstagram, like a lot of times those are used as like, this book wasn't that good, you know?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed
romance, but I was like, no, like this was just what I needed.
Skipping like a rock on a pond.
Yeah, I was just hanging out, like just in a field of flowers, vibing, my hair in pigtails, wearing like a Selkie dress, you know, Julie Andrews and Sound of Music.
That's a Selkie dress?
No, a Selkie dress is like, it's like a modern fashion designer. Yeah. They're like, it's cottagecore, like that sort of.
Yeah, I see. The peasant sleeves.
Yeah. Like that vibe. Mm-hmm. That was this book. So if you need a book that's just going to be like no angst, because even, I mean, I was the whole time, I was like, there was never a time, I don't know, because like there wasn't, so the premise of it is that Caro's friend, who's an opera singer and also the fiance of Val's cousin, gets kidnapped at the very beginning. And so, and they don't find her until the very end. So like the whole time you're like, oh my God, is she okay? Like they're like, oh my God, she could be dead. But I don't know, there was just like never a time, like even though like, because even like it's a romance, I know it's going to have an HEA. I know she's not going to be dead. But there are still romances where I'm like, oh my God, like how can this possibly be resolved? Like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And like even though you know it's going to end well, but at this point, there was never a time like in this book where I was like, oh no, like how is this going to be resolved? I was just like, no, they're just like, they're going along. Like the characters, like they're just one step at a time, and like then they're going to resolve it, and like that was it.
Yeah, definitely. But not every book has that for me. Like I feel like it's notable when I'm like, I really have no idea how this is going to be spun. Like I just cannot imagine. I really want this dress.
They're like expensive,
but it's $325.
Is it the strawberry dress?
Wait, it's Anthropology. No, it's the Selkie Pinafore printed midi dress. I don't know, I like this random dress that came up.
Okay, well,
if anyone would like to buy it for me. There's only extra
buy
small
it with our
and
TikTok
medium
earnings.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Ugh, after taxes.
We're earning a like lemonade stand level of
our
of
lemonade.
burning.
Not your typical lemonade stand, but our
version of a lemonade stand, which were always very lucrative, except again, not lucrative at all. We're not making
yeah,
we're not about to quit our jobs for TikTok. Unless yeah. So this was no angst in this book. And also like this book made me remember it made me remember the word knucklehead. Like I was like I just feel like both of these characters, like they're such knuckleheads.
Why?
And I was just thinking that like I don't know, that was just like that was the vibe. You know what I mean? Like they weren't dummies. They weren't like I don't know, like I just halfway through this book I was like knuckleheads. That's what they are. They're knuckleheads. So if you want a book with that vibe, this is for you.
I don't know if that's the word I would use, but we go for it. Yeah. Nice.
Anyway.
Okay. So, yeah, we also like didn't know Effie. That's the thing. It's like, did you know Effie more from the first book?
No.
Yeah. She wasn't someone that we were like cared about or were like worried that she was.
Well, that's why it was no angst. I was like, I don't know who this person is. She's like an abstract, maybe she's dead character, but like she's not. And even when they got rescued, it was like, oh, they're rescued. The next day, let's skip together, like skip a month forward. Everybody's healed. Everybody's cool. The right people are in jail.
Yeah.
Like, no angst.
Right. And like Frank, like he also gets taken, but like I mean, like the entire
Frank or Effie are.
Yeah, sure. The other person who's taken, they're like constantly casting aspersions on his character. So even though we like have seen him a little bit, it's like I don't really care that much about him either. But yeah, let's go. Okay. So
yeah, so Effie is an actress. We mentioned that she's like a famous actress. She's super hot. Like she's like the actress that everybody wants to fuck. And then Frank is her fiance. He's Val's cousin. He's like, you know, he's just kind of like
the nephew of a duke though, and like he has a history of like going after actresses, and his like father has, you know, because Val's dad talked to his brother and was like, hey, this boy's bringing shame on the family, his father has like threatened to cut him off if he like kept proposing to every actress that like caught his fancy or something.
So the whole time you're like, oh, you're like, you don't know whether like, is this just another situation like that? Is Frank involved? Like whatever, but like never fear. Again, no angst. It is true love.
Like how many opera singers or actresses has he tried to marry? Because that's what Val's dad says. He's like, he's going to cut the boy off without a penny if he didn't try to stop trying to marry every opera singer or performer he'd become infatuated with.
Here's the thing. Knowing like Val's dad and how snobby he is, I feel like it was like 2.
Yeah.
And like they're like, oh my God.
It's still kind of a lot of like people you're trying to marry that ends up not going through. Like
I think it was more like he came home and was
if
like,
I had a nickel,
this opera singer and she was so hot. Yeah. If I had a nickel for every time my son proposed to an opera singer, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
Right? Yeah.
It is a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But yes, so because Effie is Caro's friend and Frank is Val's cousin, they are both involved in solving this crime because Andrew, who is Kate's Scotland Yard husband boy, is like, yeah, they're not going to really care that like an actress has been kidnapped. Like they're really only going to care about the fact that her carriage was stolen. Like the lost property is more important.
Or it's like they're going to assume that she just like is so like flighty and irresponsible that she just like went off on her own. Yeah. And ditched Frank. So yeah. So they have to like sort of solve the murder because the police aren't going to do it. Shocker.
Yeah.
That.
Which is a running theme throughout this book, is that like the police are incompetent.
Yeah.
With the exception of Andrew, Kate's husband.
Because he's not a policeman. Remember at one point someone refers to him as like policeman and he's like, just so you know, I'm actually a detective inspector. That's like as insulting as if I were to call you a baronet. Like he says that to like a duke.
Oh my God. Well, that's just because he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
But even in the first book, Andrew spends the whole time being like, oh my God, I am surrounded by idiots. Like he's like, all these people are so incompetent. I don't understand.
Yeah. So Val gets like the messenger from Frank asking to come help him, and he's like with his dad at the time, and he doesn't want to tell his dad just in case like, you know, Frank gets cut off.
His dad has also just given him a lecture about marrying a respectable lady TM because he's now the heir.
He's like, he wanted to decry his father's snobbery, but like always, he knew it would be about as helpful as asking the sun to shine at night. I feel that when you're just like arguing with someone that like, no point even correcting it. But then he gets the unexpected messenger and he's like, but Val dreaded every unexpected messenger ever since the day of Piers' accident. It's very sad.
It's very sad. But I was also like, at this point, I was just like, I know we're very like, the book has barely even started, but I need Val to get over the class expectations and start groveling ASAP. I was like, I'm already tired of this man's shit.
Oh yeah, he has at this point. So okay, so we show up. What's her face? Caro sees Val and she's like, what's he doing here? Like, Mary, I don't want him here. We get like a description of Val, including that he's like bulked up since she last saw him and he has, quote, cheekbones that could cut glass. And every time I hear that description, I just picture that guy from the Peaky Blinders, that guy.
Oh, that's like exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. Cheekbones that could cut glass. Like that's the only way to describe it.
But also like immediately as soon as Val and Caro are in a room together, there's just like immediate secret pining.
Oh yeah.
And like they're just like, so again, they're knuckleheads. Like they're both like, oh my God, like I want him/her so much, but like no, I can't. Like they're just so stupid. They're knuckleheads.
Yeah. And okay, so then and Val is like immediately, you know, understandably to some extent, his concern is like initially he wants to find Effie, but he's also worried about like bringing Frank, like getting embroiled in like family scandal or whatever.
Dishonor
and he's like,
dishonor
on your cow. Yeah. And he's like, how can we be sure the kidnapping wasn't staged? And Caro's like, Effie would never do that. Like, stop slandering her. And Val's like, I'm not saying the kidnapping was staged by Effie. And let me just say, like, how is it if the person being kidnapped is
been
not
like
in on it
over the head?
Yeah, Frank's been clobbered over the head. But listen, if the person being kidnapped is not in on the staging, like they're just, and he's like, maybe it's for ransom. They're just kidnapping someone for ransom money. That's just regular run of the mill kidnapping. That's not staged. That's just how kidnapping works. Like, what? Who are you staging it with?
I feel like we've had this conversation before.
I said it to you when I read it. Oh. I was like, what? Like
that's just how kidnapping works.
Yeah.
Yeah, he accuses Frank because Frank, he's like, well, maybe like you proposed to her and then you realized that it would get you cut off. So you had her kidnapped so that like you could break off like something convoluted. And Frank like rightfully is like, hey, fuck right off. That is the love of my life you're speaking about. And Val has the first of many brain blasts in which she's like, oh, this is what I did to Caroline. I get it now. But it only takes him one try. That's the thing. Like, it's immediately like he has the interaction and he has the brain, no angst, no waiting. The man just, like, these people just are rapid firing, coming to conclusions.
Yeah, exactly. And then it also immediately, like, everyone is on the same page of, like, this quote is said in, like, various forms, like, multiple times. Like, in most cases, when a woman is harmed, the culprit is usually either her husband or lover.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, well, we've read enough of Caro and Kate's column to know. And I'm just glad, like, everyone in this world is, like, on the same page of, like,
yeah,
I don't know. We take the column as gospel. It's good.
Yes, everyone's like the column has, like, a huge fan base. And, like, they're constantly moving the plot forward because they write this column. Yeah, so then they all go off their separate ways to like interview and do some investigation. And Val is like, we have to go to the opera to like investigate because that's where like Effie was last seen. We have to investigate her suitors at the opera. But he's like, I have a genius idea. I'm going to invite Caro to sit in the Duke's box at the opera and I'm going to send the note to her mom so she can't say no. And it's not because I want to win her back or anything. It's just because I want to show her that I'm a changed man. And he's just like, you're so stupid. He comes up with this whole convoluted plan and I'm like,
and doesn't even realize
a knucklehead.
Yeah, exactly. And then he tells Andrew or Eversham or whatever, and Eversham's like, you're about to get your ass whooped for that. Like, she's not gonna be happy about that. And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, when you do that, it like means you want to fucking marry her. Like, you don't think her mom is gonna be like super into that whole idea. And he's like, I'm just now thinking in quite a worried way that I might have made an error.
He's so dumb.
Oh my god.
Meanwhile, he's suffering in his foolishness.
And Caro and
Kate. No, Caro and Kate have gone off to interview Julia.
Oh yeah, okay. So Julia's like not really relevant. I'm not really sure what the point.
She's Effie's understudy. They're like briefly like maybe she had Effie kidnapped so like she could whatever. And Julia's like, I don't give a fuck. like whatever.
They're
like,
rivals. She's not always her understudy. She's like a big actress in herself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't really learn anything from this except
I think it's just a red herring.
Yeah. Well, she does tell them that like Effie had a man. Well, we knew from Frank also that there was like a man who was watching Effie like from a distance in her house and also at the theater. And that never really comes back either, I guess. Like we kind of
No, I think it's implied to be like one of the people involved in her kidnapping.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that doesn't really come to anything. Meanwhile, Val goes to hang out in his club with his random aristocratic friend. What's his name? Langham? He became more of a character. I didn't expect him to become a big character.
Oh,
so
I
didn't write down his name.
as soon as he was one of the people that repeated the thing about the column, like knowing like things from the column, I was like, all right, so he's gonna be like
he's a big character.
Yeah, exactly. Like I knew he couldn't be the villain.
Anyway, yeah, he came and he's like, I don't know shit. Like, even, yes, I brought Effie flowers, but like I haven't been to her in a while. And then because he was like dating, wasn't he dating like Julie?
No,
he was dating like one of Effie's friends, at the theater, but like they've broken up or whatever. But he says something about Caro. Like, he says something about Caro having like nice tits or something, while also like being smart and like writing a nice column. Like, it's weird. And Val is ready to like pound him into fucking dust. Like, he is ready to whoop this man's ass immediately. And then he's like, oh my god, like, ugh, what is this? Like, I'm just way too feral when it comes
he
to
he had to stop himself from grabbing the Duke by his neckcloth and shaking him like a dog with a squirrel. That is the quote. Strong dog energy there.
Val is a terrier for sure. He's like a hunting dog. But yeah, he's like, but Val's like, oh my god, I almost beat my friend up because of Caro. What could this possibly mean? I'm just out of control. Why did I invite her to the opera? Like, it's not because I want to like win her back.
Yeah. Oh my god.
This man.
Also, something that we skipped over when Caro was going to see Juliet. Sorry, we're going like all over the place in my notes here.
Oh, I didn't really write down a lot of plot. I don't have very many notes, so like definitely intervene if I'm skipping ahead.
Yeah, Caro's like going to the theater and there's like a secret back entrance that they're not supposed to go in as members of the public. And she's like, Caro had learned long ago that the secret to gaining entrance to an establishment where one wasn't sure of one's welcome was to simply behave as though one had the perfect right to be. And that's something I also recently learned, like not like more specifically with like food delivery. Like if you ever need to get into a building, all you need to do is bring like a fake food bag and walk in and be like, I'm here with like DoorDash. I have DoorDash for whatever, for like apartment 4C. I'm just saying like, or not even like, you just need to like walk in and like pretend like or a hotel or like anything, like no one will question you. It's even better if you have
you don't even
your Dasher bag,
have the Dasher bag. Like I
know
I
used to said a food bag.
No, you don't even need to have food bag. I'm saying I used to walk dogs, and this one dog that I walked twice a week, he lived in a building, and the person would never leave me a key. They would leave a key to get into their apartment, but not into the building. So every time I had to like just go down the buzzers and be like, hey, can you let me in? Like, I'm a dog walker. And like these people did not verify that I was there to walk. And like I wasn't breaking into random buildings, but like I could have been God knows who.
Oh, I know. Sometimes they verify, but then if you're going to call, all you have to do is be like, oh, actually, like, just pretend to like check your app and be like, oh, actually, this is the wrong address. Like, sorry. Bye.
I think it is very fitting that we're giving people like criminal advice while talking about like a romantic crime.
Don't use this for criminal. Just like, I don't know when you would use this for like legitimate purposes, but
there's not a single situation I can think of.
There has to be a single situation. What if you're solving a crime and you need to go rescue someone? What about that? Huh?
What?
You're solving a crime. You're Caro and Kate at the end of this book, and you need to get into a building. And obviously whatever. Okay.
Yeah, Caro and Kate do kind of use this technique at the end. We'll
they use it multiple times.
Yeah, anyway, Caro gets home and her mom is like, oh my god, this is amazing. The Duke's son has invited us to the opera. And Caro is like, I'm going to kick this man's ass. I'm going to pull out the knife that I keep in my boot at all times that I definitely have on me in my pockets. Because multiple times she's like, my dress has pockets. And I'm going to cut this man's dick off. She's like, oh my god, fuck him. And like, this whole time you're like, yep. We've been waiting for this.
And, like, a constant refrain is that, like, Caro is quote unquote impulsive, but, like, Val isn't, like, and I don't know, I feel like that was more talk than, like, action because I feel like Val does, like, a bunch of impulsive things and, like, Caro doesn't really, like, because she's like, "Yeah, he must, like, there's no way he coulda just, like, slipped out, like, he's definitely trying to, like, punish me or whatever or, like, annoy me by doing this." But, yeah, it's always just like, "Oh, Caro's so impulsive," but, like, when is she impulsive? I don't know.
This book was very much, and like, again, I think this was like the low angst thing as well. Like there really wasn't a lot of internal characterization in this book. It was very much like, I feel like, plot driven rather than character driven.
No, but that's it. No, that's what I'm saying. Well, I'm saying like, okay, sure. I just mean like in this specific thing, this is something they would say, but like wasn't really borne out in the plot, I didn't think.
I mean, I just don't think there was room for that in the structure of the book. I don't think there was room for us to like get extraneous scenes and I don't know.
I guess she does like go like,
yeah.
And
Wait,
I guess
she's
it's like her learning to trust her instinct.
Very impulsive.
Oh, it's true.
In the next scene.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, never mind. All right. Also, Caro has a wacky cat.
Yes,
an ill-behaved cat.
His name is Ludwig.
Yeah.
He lets out meows like human babies. Well, that's a direct quote.
That's all cats. That's why they meow.
No,
yes.
but like it sounds like specifically in the book, she walks in, the cat meows, and the like other person in the room is like, "Oh my god, it sounds like a human baby."
Well, apparently something about the breed of this cat makes them like yowl a lot because her mom's like, "Can't you shut it up?" And Kara's like, it's just his nature. Like he can't help it. It's just how he is. Why would you want to stifle Ludwig's yowls?
Yeah, I really love the trope of the cat that likes no one, like no one else except for like its mistress. Oh, and it also likes like Flora, who's like Kate's assistant.
Yeah.
But like that's it. Like the cat does not like anyone.
Kate's like, Kara's like, I let the rumble of his purrs soothe me. So Kate and her mom have like a heart to heart. And Kara's like, yeah, now that I think about it, I've always just been like super against my mom's whole thing of like having me marry really well, but I've never really like told her why. I was just like so annoyed with her.
Yeah, she's like, wow, maybe that's a conversation that I should have had at some point before I was like 29 and like fully an old me. I'm like,
oh my God.
Yeah, Caro, probably. But they also have the conversation. She's like, oh no, Papa used to talk about business with me all the time, but he doesn't anymore. And the mom is like, I asked him not to because it was like getting in the way of your marriage prospects, but also like she's still gonna inherit everything, which is great. Like it's like very clearly like, yes, she gets the whole tin making factory.
It doesn't make any sense. I did not understand this conversation because her mom's like, oh, the reason I wanted you to marry so well is because your dad was like lowborn and he would never say this, but he's always thought that like I could have married royalty if I wanted to, and that if you could have married royalty if it wasn't for him like holding you back. And then she says that the thing about like asking the dad to stop discussing the managerial aspects of the business with Caro. And it didn't make any sense because she's like, yeah, the more he shared with you and realized how clever you are, the more fearful he's become. He wants more than anything for you to be happy. And to his mind, that means securing a husband who won't hold his pedigree against him. It just didn't add up. It was a lot of words that didn't make any sense.
Okay, so I think
like her husband doesn't want her to be smart and clever.
No, I think it was more like he was like the dad, because she was like, I asked the dad to stop telling you about it like for the dad. It wasn't for you.
What does that have to do for it? Doesn't make sense. But because no, the sentence before that is like your father would be perfectly happy for you to stay independent and run the business. And then right after that, it's like your dad thinks that in order to be happy, you need a husband who like is fine.
She just thinks, I think it's more like he wants you to have the freedom to like choose a husband, and he feels like the fact that he's like this lowborn, because Caro's mom was also like, she's like a lady, she's like the daughter of an earl or something, like she's an aristocrat. But I think I think it's like from the dad's perspective, he's like, I'm talking to her about the business all the time. She's super interested in the business. She's like super smart, and like I'm encouraging her to like do that in front of other people. And like she's getting like more and more independent, and so it's more and more difficult for her to like fit into the world where she already has like a disadvantage because of me. It's very convoluted.
No, it's very sexist. It's very spun as like supposed to be like heartwarming, but it's actually just like your husband wouldn't want you to be competent. That'll lower your chances of getting a husband if you're competent and know how to run the business, and if you're too like informed. I can't see any other way to spin it.
I don't know. I read this like 2 weeks ago, so I think there's probably some nuance that I'm forgetting. But I don't remember being
I wrote down
being
like all the
"Yeah,
exact
okay."
quotes. I'm not seeing it. It doesn't make sense. It's said in a way as if it's like Caro's at first like a little bit outraged, or not as outraged as she should be, a little bit outraged, and then like by the end it's like, oh, she gets it, but like it doesn't make sense. Anyway, the Caro like tries to explain to the mom that like Val doesn't want to marry her and that's not why he invited them. And the mom's like, no. She just like lays on the law. She was like, I will not let you spoil my pleasure in this, Caroline. Whatever you suspect may be the reason behind the Viscount's invitation, you will keep it to yourself until tomorrow. Tonight, we will dress in our finest gowns and Papa in his finest evening suit. And we will go enjoy sitting in a duke's private box.
Get the smelling
I just
salts.
love that. Yeah, she's like, you know what? Save it. Just like shove it.
Don't be a fucking buzzkill, Caroline.
Right. Like this is like the highlight of my. I was gonna play Yahtzee all night, and now I get to go look at hot people in the opera and have other people looking at me
and have
I'm
hot people look
person.
at me,
Yeah,
most particularly.
Yeah.
However, they show up at the opera, and who but the Duke and Duchess
are
there?
Yeah, and
nobody could have seen this coming.
Yeah, and they go up, and Val like sees that there's already like a servant or something like waiting outside, and he's like, "That's weird. They normally wouldn't send them up until later." And then like this, when they're like the Duke and Duchess are inside, and Caro like sees his face for a second, and he's like, you know, blanches or whatever, and she's like, "I believe the phrase is hoist with your own petard, or is it boiled in your own pudding?" She's like.
He's like, you're dumb.
What if there weren't enough seats? Like, why didn't he check? I don't understand. Like, what if, like, how many seats are in a box?
I don't know. I think you can fit like 6 people, definitely. I'm basing this purely off of our recent watch of the Gilded Age. It's the same time period. I'm assuming it's the same setup.
Yeah.
In these boxes.
So. Is it the same time period?
Yes. Yes? I know. I kept forgetting. I'm like 99% sure this takes place during like the 1870s or something. I could be very wrong. It definitely didn't give me Regency era vibes.
I feel like the default is like Regency era in my head.
Okay, here's my thing. This was definitely something that I was wondering as I was reading, and I meant to fact check it, and then I never did.
Yeah.
So
I figured I thought
like
about it, and I was like,
sure. Well, he's
Allison
like he's like a manufacturer. The fact that her dad is like a man of business, I'm like, okay, so this is like Victorian era at the very least. Maybe it's a little bit pre-Gilded Age, but I'm like, okay, it's definitely Victorian era. Anyway, it's very awkward. Val's parents are snobbish. And then he stands up to his dad for her, like kind of. Like he's like, don't fucking insult my lady friend, Papa. I forget exactly what he says. But I'm just like, Val is just like he's like so cute and like proud of himself. Yeah. Like as he's like, wow, like good for me. Like I stood up to get my Papa. Like now Caroline is smiling, and also she looks so pretty in her dress.
Well, it's weird because he's like with her father seated next to him in the carriage. He hadn't been able to take in the exquisite totality of her appearance. Oh, it's weird because his mom, Val's mom, when she walks in, Val's like, oh my gosh, I see her face. She's obviously drawing the wrong conclusions. Like the implication being that he wants to marry her because he's like, she's
like,
smiling.
I definitely don't want to marry her. That's definitely not true.
But then right after that, the mom like subtly disses the family by like pretending not to recognize them, even though they have met before, at least like multiple times. And Val's like, yeah, I recognize that as like the subtle dig it is. But then right after that, the Duchess is like right back on her train of like, I want Val to marry like literally whoever. Like this Carol girl seems like a great choice. And I just don't know. It's just like it seems like a random out of character moment.
I wasn't sure because this is the first time we meet the mom, and like before the only thing we know about the mom is that the dad is like, oh, you like your mom has like a list of like eligible debutantes or whatever, like your mom just wants you to get married. So I don't really, and like the rest of the time, like the mom is never snobbish again, you know what I mean? The rest of the time,
that's what
she's
I mean.
Like super
so
chill.
Random.
She's like, even like for the rest of the book, she's like, yeah like great Caroline. So I wonder whether that's like a moment in which Val is like making assumptions about his mom because of his preconceived notions. You know, he's like overcorrecting in a way. He's like, oh, all of my family are like snobbish jerks, and so like I have to like immediately assume the worst of them. Whereas like maybe I don't know. Yeah.
It was just weird.
I think because this whole book is Val like I think learning nuance a little bit. He's like, oh my god, like situations aren't all black and white. That's crazy.
Well, Caro too. It's like mirrored in Caro. Yeah. She has that exact thought of like, well, it's more. She's like, I have a tendency to see things in black and white. And I always thought that was a weakness, but maybe my weakness is not like believing my instincts on that. And I should actually see things in black and white and like go with whatever I think.
Well, maybe it's like Caro's like too
doubting. Yeah, I don't
she's
know.
like too down. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, so she has to correct in the opposite direction. They
Mm-hmm.
both have to blend together in order to create the perfect balance.
Okay, so
anyway, Caroline sneaks backstage. She like follows a man with flowers backstage, and then she like flirts her way in, and she's like, you knaves, Effie's not here, she's been kidnapped. And there's a drunk man, and he's like, oh my god, where's Effie? And then he like falls on her or something, and then like Val
none of them
hears her scream, and he's like dun 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 dun. Like he's just like fucking like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible running down this hallway. Like he's like, get off of her, you knave. And the fan club in general is just like absolutely feral. Like Carol walks in and they're like, where's Effie? Like there's just a bunch of middle school boys.
Yeah. This is where I wrote IDK what you mean about no tension, because there's definitely some tension. There's definitely some pining too, because he's like, you're frozen.
No, I'm not.
You're frozen.
I was just sitting still.
No, you're still frozen on my screen.
Oh.
You're in a blurred position, so I know you can't be holding it like that. Wait, I'll take a picture.
I'm just vibrating at like a very like fast rate, so you think that I
sneaky. Like
the Flash. That's I'm like the Flash.
So he rescues her, but then her dress has like gotten ripped, so that's kind of scandalous. She doesn't have anything to fix it with. She takes out one of his like pins. I was unclear what like clothing this came from, but she takes it out and like he has to help her.
Pin.
It's and he has to like do it for her. So we have the classic tension of like, pining man.
Like, oh my God, I'm touching her.
He's like, I can almost touch it. Yeah, he's like, I can feel her warmth,
which you would never get in anything but historical.
It's true. It's true.
You just can't get that kind of shit in places where people can just touch you casually. But yeah, so they interrogate the drunk man, and she like tells Val, she's like, lift him up, and so I can interrogate him. And Val is like, I'm not a footman who you can just order around. But then he just like immediately does it. He's like, but I will. I'm lifting him up because I want to, not because you told me to. Also, this whole time he keeps pissing Carol off, and he's like, well, like, I like to piss Carol off because like then at least she's talking to me. And it's just such a like it's Gilbert Blythe pulling Anne Shirley's like pigtail like in their first meeting, and then her turning around and smashing her school plate over his head, and him immediately falling in love with her. Like that this dynamic is so Anne Shirley and Gilbert Blythe.
Oh my
100%.
God. Yeah, because she's constantly like snapping at him, and he's like, wait, what did you say? I was distracted by your scent.
What was that?
Yeah.
Lilies.
And he's like, so they're like questioning. Val's like, sorry, what do they question the man about? Before that, when he's like running to rescue her, Val's like, he'd never behaved with more rashness in his entire life than he had today. Perhaps he was sickening with something. And it was just like, yeah, sickening with love.
You have rabies. That's what you have. Like you've been infected with love rabies. Yeah, because when he's doing that, I got to that point. I guess the cravat pin thing is like actually after they interrogate him, but like as she's putting it on, he's like, first of all, he has the thought where he wants to lick her exposed skin. So like it's not even just like, oh, I like I'm touching her. It's like I literally want to fucking, like, he's a dog. he's such a dog. And then he's also like, I can't touch her without creaming in my pants. Oh my Why am I so feral? He's like, oh my God, like I can't. Anyway, yeah. So they interrogate the guy, and all they find out is like one more suspect whose name is Lord Tate. The guy is like, yeah, Lord Tate and her like got in a fight or something because like Lord Tate asked her to be his mistress, and she was like, no. But then if you thought that the ripped dress was just for licking thoughts and sexual attention, think again, dear listener, because surprise, surprise, they get discovered by both their parents as soon as they walk out the door.
Yep. Because they know they're going to get discovered. But for some reason, she's like, oh, yeah, I'll just tell them I tripped. I tripped and fell into Val's arms, and they'll totally believe that. And for some reason, like nothing has changed about the scenario. It's not like it's an unexpected scenario they walk into. It's just like they immediately realize that it's not going to work.
No, well, it's also because they walk out and one of Caro's dad's business partners is like, "Oh my God, your daughter's a fucking slut." And she's like, "Nobody calls me a slut in front of my papa and makes my papa feel bad. Guess what, bitch? I'm engaged." And Val is like, "I was thinking the same thing. I was literally going to say that same lie."
I was going to say yes, but why are you saying yes? Well, no, because he like, he threatens to like stop doing business with the dad, and Caro's like, "Oh, this could like ruin our whole business." And she's also like, she has like a moment. She's like, she'd always faulted Val, but for the first time, she recognized that perhaps his behavior had come not from a place of aristocratic snobbery, but family loyalty. And she's like, hopefully he can forgive her when she sacrificed both of their future happiness with her next words. And I was like, hey. She's like, she likened herself to Lady Macbeth, and then is like, we're engaged. And I'm like, yeah, Val is not.
She spends like the next. This was honestly the most angst in the whole book, where she just spends the next chapter being like, "Oh no, I've doomed us to a fate of misery." It's very Anthony Bridgerton and Kate Sheffield in the book, because like she's like, "Oh no, like he doesn't actually love me. Like I've trapped him in marriage." And then Val is like, "Well, if I have to, like, who? Oh, I wouldn't technically didn't want to get married, but like, I might as well."
Also, for romance novel purposes, this like, you know, was good, but also Caro jumping the gun after like one critic, I feel like that's something you should always resist the urge to do. Like
Impulsive.
Like one, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but like, I feel like that's, I don't know, I feel like that's happened like many times. Like someone like the first person to like comment on something says something mean, and you're like, you're tempted to like throw out the entire thing, but then like after that, everyone else is supportive, you know. So
it makes a little bit
get more
sense
data
in historicals, I think, because it really was like one comment could like ruin your fucking life. Whereas like in contemporaries, yeah, I'm like, okay, you know, maybe like, you know, try to mitigate the circumstances a little bit before.
I just mean in general in life, like don't, at least like wait for like more haters before you consider like changing your course of action.
I can't. I immediately like I too.
One hater
like
does not
dog.
cancel out. Yeah, one hater does not cancel out Europe. Yeah, I don't know.
You're ready to fight at a moment's notice.
So yeah, then they announce it, and Val's like, "Oh, I'm so glad that Caroline decided to put me out of my misery and make me the happiest of men," which is like the first of the several direct quotes from Pride and Prejudice. Although this is a Mr. Collins-y thing, I feel like, so it's an interesting choice. Mr. Darcy might say it. That might just be like common phrasing, honestly.
No, I think it's the happiest of men.
Yeah, and then they're just like laughing. They just like they're like Caro's like, "Oh, it has been long been my fondest wish to put you out of your misery." And then they just both start like, I feel like they're just like snickering into their hands the entire time in front of her mom. And then her mom says, like, I guess it's a running joke that the mom has like weird like phrases that she uses, and she's like, "Oh, like hopefully we'll all be in our finest fettle at the wedding," and like, and Val's like, "I endeavor to show your daughter only my finest fettle." And her mom's just like snickering.
Yeah. So they're all like, "Oh, congratulations." And then like Val goes up to his papa, and there isn't like, his papa's not a dick again, but there's definitely the moment where like, where it's essentially, I don't think they actually hug, but like they hug, and then like Val whispers in his dad's ear, and it's like, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
I'll fucking kill you if you insult her one more, like, see if I fucking don't. And later on he is like, "Hey, listen, if you're ever mean to Caro, I will cut contact with you, and also you will never meet our children." Like, I am ready. This man, again, the rabies has infected his brain. He's fully feral now.
But then, like you were saying, like, the dad is like immediately apologetic as soon as he realizes like how serious it is. He's like, I'm sorry. Like immediately is like, "Oh, I guess I'm just like not keeping up with the times," like whatever.
Yeah, there's like there's no end. The dad is like, "Oh, like," because it is like, the dad is like, "You know what? Like, I have lost one son. I'm not interested in losing the other. I'm not going to be a fucking dick about it. Like, if my son wants to marry this girl, then he's going to marry this girl. I'm like, I don't care."
Yeah. And that's something that I feel like, well, I mean, obviously it's a book, but like I feel like in real life the parents would be a lot more fucked up for like a lot longer if their son had died.
Even in other romance, like that is usually a plot line that continues until the end of the book, if it's ever resolved.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the snobbish shitty dad is like a very like that's the romance hero bread and butter.
I can't think of a single time it's been resolved. Like, I feel like it either the dad like was shitty in the past and is now dead, or like is still shitty and continues to be shitty. Like that's never, I can never think of a time
And
when
I can
the
think of one in Sarah MacLean's Rogue Not Taken, where the dad like told him not to marry the girl and like tried to pay her off, and then she dies in the carriage accident, and so he spent the whole time like hating the dad and being like, I'll never have children, which is also like the romance hero bread and butter.
Oh yeah, and it turns
And
out
then at the
that
end, like they make up.
so yeah, so they're like, okay, so it's like after the proposal, or not no proposal, just engagement, no thoughts, just vibes, and like they're in the carriage together. They get the mom to let them have like some time in the carriage alone. Which like would that be something that'd be like allowed, like even if they are engaged? Like I don't know, whatever.
Victorian era, especially like when he's like a future duke.
Yeah. And then they're like about to start fighting, but then also Kara's like, oh, I just want to make out, but then I forget which one of them says this. They're like, oh, in the past, they just like avoided difficult conversations with physicality. We need to stop doing that.
This is Val. Yeah, Val is the thing. He's like, we like made out a lot before, and like maybe that wasn't the best decision to like never have like serious conversations, and like maybe we should do that now. Maybe we should have the hard conversations.
Yeah.
At the same time, he's being a fucking dumbass, and he's like, oh, I'm just marrying you for honor. Like he's like acting like it's just like honor, and so Caroline thinks that she's like, yeah, no, we definitely like we have to, like it's okay, like I'll get us out of this. And Val is like, no. And then he's also like, we need to talk about the past. And she's like, I don't want to talk about the past. And he's like, you're a coward. And I'm like, good. I love when people call each other cowards.
Yeah. I know. It's always like, yeah.
Anyway, but then again, same scene. 2 pages later, they're like, no, we will be engaged and we will be making out. Like, no, this is not drawn out at all. Immediately resolved.
Yeah. So, okay. So next day
she shows up and she's like, bitch, my friend is still missing. We need to go investigate. And she shows up. She is at the door. She's come in her little phaeton and ponies. Not actually, she's come in like, I don't know, her fancy like racing carriage. And she tapped her riding crop against her leg, or where her leg would be if ladies had such extremities, which propriety said one should never ever acknowledge.
Yeah,
like,
what?
That's a great line. Like on one end, he's like, oh my god, she has a fucking riding crop and I'm so fucking horny like for her riding crop and her leg. But on the other hand, it's like, LOL, but ladies don't have legs, wink wink.
Well, so the butler doesn't let her in the house originally. Like he comes up and he's like, hey, Val, there's this like girl outside and she says you're engaged, but like obviously I don't believe her because you would have told me. Like the butler just like lays on the guilt so thick. He's like, you would never have done something this important without telling me, dude. We've
known each other. Like I changed your fucking diapers. Yeah. Like you would never do this to me, right?
Yeah. And the fact that he doesn't even let her like inside, like he's not even like, oh, come in the sitting room and just like wait. He's just like, no, like slams it. I'm just picturing it's like raining. He slams it on her face. She's just like has to like stand outside, like tapping her riding crop.
She's like ready to beat this butler's ass.
Yeah.
But I get it. She's like a single woman. This is like a bachelor's residence. Like it wouldn't have even been appropriate for her to wait in the sitting room.
And so, isn't it even more scandalous to like be out on the street and someone can see her?
Well, I guess he expected her to leave.
I guess.
Yeah, no, but no, him not letting her inside is definitely not like a historical anachronism. Like that's like valid. That checks out.
And Mel's like, oh, sorry, dude. Like, it is actually her. So they let her inside.
And the butler does not let this go.
No.
This is again, like, this is like one of the only pieces of angst that continues throughout the whole book. Like, literally until like the very end. The butler's like, yeah, I just, he would never not tell me something important like that. Like, just nonstop, every scene this man is in. And I aspire to hold a grudge that would like be that petty.
Yeah. Oh my god. So then we have this like little monologue for Val about how like, so I guess, so this house used to be Piers and his brother Piers and his wife Cynthia's house. And he's like, yeah, most of the furnishings have been chosen by Piers and Cynthia. And so like, you not only kick this poor woman out of her house, your sister-in-law out of her house, you didn't even let her keep any of her stuff. Like, well, what?
None of it was hers.
I know, but still, it just seems like very like
it was stingy. Weird. They were like, yeah, Cynthia was off with her parents.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's weird that she's living with it. But also,
where
like,
would she go, I guess? Where would she go?
Yeah, where else would she go? Like, she can't, like, what is she going to live by herself? Like, I'm sure she has some sort of, like,
Money,
widow's
dowry.
money. Yeah, she gets like some sort of like
Do
annuity.
you get to keep your dowry?
No.
Like, I thought you said the money was for their like pocket money.
That's what technically the purpose of the dowry is for, but that doesn't mean you get to keep it. It's not yours anymore.
Right,
Like,
but
it
it's
gets absorbed into the estate. That's the purpose of the dowry.
I don't know.
No, I'm sure she got some sort of annuity. We never meet Cynthia. But that was how, because Cynthia invited Caro to her wedding. And
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
that was how Val and Caro met. Piers was like, "Oh, Cynthia's throwing a good party, but like she'll need to learn to not like invite like trash like Caro."
Yeah. Well, so they're school friends. And before this, there was some, I forget, like Caro's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry about your brother," or like, "I'm sorry for Cynthia," or something. And Piers is like, or Val is like, "Wow, like even though we were so snobby to her, even though Piers was so snobby to her, she can still feel sympathy for his widow." And I was just like, that's her school friend. Like, why wouldn't she feel sympathy? What? This has nothing to do with Piers. Like, what?
Like, also,
It was
just
just
because
weird.
Piers was like a snobbish dick doesn't mean she's glad that he's dead.
Right.
Like,
Like, what? I know. It felt very like Anthony Bridgerton, where he's like, "Wow, Kate and Edwina actually do love each other. Sisters aren't like just competitive. Other people can have siblings they care about. It's not just me. I thought it was just me that could love people." Like, anyway, so
this book definitely, like, Caro didn't really give me Kate vibes, but Val definitely gave me Anthony Bridgerton, like book Anthony, and even show Anthony Bridgerton vibes. Just like feral, oblivious, but with much less angst, like a much less angsty version of Anthony Bridgerton.
Yeah. So he's thinking about like how the house is all picked up by Cynthia, and he's like, and then he was like, "I'm shocked by how much I care if like Caro likes it." He's like, "I realize he would quite possibly be willing to tear the whole place down and rebuild it should she ask."
Knucklehead.
Yeah. And also, okay, so also when the butler came in and was like, "It's your fiance," at this point, I was like confused. I was like, "Is Frank there too?" Because Frank hasn't like gone missing yet. And I thought it was gonna be Effie at the door, because you had like built it up as like there's no suspense, and I was like, "Wait, is Effie just gonna like show up and be like, I've been on holiday this whole time?" Like,
no.
I don't know.
I didn't say no suspense. I said no angst.
No, you
like,
said no suspense.
I never felt, my heart was never like in knots. Like my stomach was never in knots about what was going to happen in this book. I don't know. For me, it was different because there was suspense in the terms I was like, "Oh no, what's going to happen with Effie?" You know what I mean? But I wasn't like upset. I wasn't angsty about it.
Right.
There, like, it was how you react to the suspense. I didn't have like the emotional reaction to the suspense that I might otherwise have had. And that's why I was like, again, no thoughts, just vibes.
So Caro and Val are talking, and Caro has the thought of like, she's like, "Wow, there's so few men I know that could keep up with the rapid pace of her thoughts, and even fewer who share her appreciation for brisk conversation." She's like, "Wow, everyone's like too fucking so annoying. Like they can't.
Everyone's
keep
too stupid for me, and like finally someone who can keep up."
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, she's driving like a maniac. Yeah, they hop in her like little racing thing to go talk to the suspect, and she just like fucking guns it. Like this bitch is street racing in fucking Mayfair.
Yeah. Also, Val's like, "Oh, shouldn't I drive for some reason?" And she's like, "No, like you need to like prove that you are capable of driving." But then later, like after they come out, she's like, "Oh, you can drive now." And he's like, "Oh, like I thought you like weren't sure if I could handle it." And she was like, "No, I just like, wanted to fuck with you, but like now I have like other things to worry about, so like I'm over that."
So they go talk to Lord Tate because he's the suspect.
Val starts his trend of being like, all these misogynistic men will feel more comfortable and will be more likely to talk if I talk to them alone without Caro. So they send Caro to like go sit in the sitting room by herself and eat some delicious vanilla, lemon, and cinnamon like cookie trays. Very delicious.
I was like, this sounds much better to me. Like I would much rather be doing this.
So yes, and then Val talks to Tate. Yeah, and Tate's like, "Yeah, no, I wanted to be my mistress, but like for right now, she's choosing that you're like loser cousin, but obviously she'll choose me in the end, because like why would she pick a duke why would she pick a cousin of a duke or whatever over a duke?"
He bought her a house. He already bought a house for her to live in. Like we learned that here too as well. But he's like, "No, I have an alibi. I was in Brighton this whole time. Like the day that she was kidnapped. Like it's whatever. But you should look into the Duke of Langham." And Val is like, oh my God, it's the second time he's been implicated. I can't believe I let him go, even though I wanted to punch him before.
Yeah. And he's like, Val tried to comprehend how Langley had time to manage interests, however shallow, for 3 different women. He could barely manage one. It's like, how does this dude have time to be like, sowing his wild oats?
A womanizer, like, God.
Yeah. And so meanwhile, Caro is like eating her snacks and she convinces the maid who delivers them to like sit and talk with her. So she gets the scoop. And the only thing she really gets is that the maid also confirms that Tate was allegedly in Brighton because she's like, oh yeah, he brought back like sweets. They were visiting his wife's sister. He brought back like sweets for the kids, the young, I don't know what little ones,
whatever,
like servants.
So you think Tate's alibi has been verified.
Yeah. And then she invites the girl to come to their like salon.
Yeah, because she get to their book club because she gets her to tell her the information because she's like, oh, you know that column that.
And the girl's like, that. Oh, it's not as shocking. When she first says it, she's like, it's not as shocking as others I've read. Like it's middle grade, but
she's like, I've read better, but like still a fan.
We get another repetition of like the first place to look when a girl turns up dead is the other side of her bed. Like just hammer it home.
Yeah,
so
like just like the person most likely to
Frank.
attack a woman is her significant other. So then they go to Effie's housekeeper, who's like her like BFF, like chill old lady that lives with Effie, like they're tight. And Effie's housekeeper is like, I found a mysterious burned letter in the grate, and I also found a letter from Frank in which Frank basically implies that they broke up or whatever.
Yeah.
And we're on the verge of breaking up.
Or she wanted to leave him for another man. That she wanted to leave him for another man. Which that never comes back.
Yeah, no, I think it does because it's okay. I mean, spoiler alert.
We'll get to it.
I always say spoiler alert as if like this whole fucking like as if we're not eventually going to talk about it, as if there's going to be like a point in this recap in which I'm like not going to give spoilers.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, we'll talk about it later. Anyway, so we're like, oh no, maybe Frank is involved. But also on the mysterious burned letter, we found like part of a seal that has, what is it, like a fox on it or something?
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh my God, we have to investigate like who belongs to this crest.
Yeah. Speaking of other loose threads, Caro tells Val, because the pastries were so good at Tate's house, she's like, if you ever have the chance to poach this man's cook, you should take it. And I was like, wow, this better happen. But then it doesn't happen. It doesn't fucking happen. They just have like their own jolly cook, whatever.
She is. And who uses Caro's writes cookbooks. By the way, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's relevant.
Caro was like a famous cookbook author before she like started her crime column. So yeah, so then they're like, all right, time to go confront fucking Frank, who stays. I really liked this little historical tidbit, which was interesting because I thought this thing only existed in the Regency era, but again, I think this is in the Victorian era. Anyway, it's like this house. It's like this like apartment complex in London that was like for super fancy men, but like the super fancy men who couldn't afford to buy their own homes, and like they're single men, and like no ladies were allowed inside, like ever. Like no ladies whatsoever allowed inside.
Which is so weird.
It was very weird. It was like a very bros club. But anyway, I was like, wow, like this little historical tidbit. But I think he's dropped Caro off at home. Yeah, because like Caro has to go home. So Val shows up at Frank's house.
They talk about the wedding for a little bit, and they're talking about how Caro wants a small wedding. Like, she doesn't want the elaborate wedding that her mom probably wants. And can I just say that Val respects her wanting a small wedding? Edward Cullen, take notes. And also at one point, Caro's like, oh yeah, why shouldn't we have a small wedding? Like, neither of our parents think it's a love match. And then she's like, she could have sworn his eyes darkened. And that's just like, I don't know. There's so many different, eyes darkening can mean anything in these books. It can mean so many things. Yeah, reaction, exactly, to anything. It can mean jealousy. It can mean you're like, you have the hots for someone. It can mean like other things that you're upset. Angry. Like, it can mean angry, like so many different things.
You just use context clues. In this case, I think it means he's upset / angry / hurt. Because he's like, it is a love match for me, even though I haven't admitted it yet.
No, I get it. I'm just saying, what does that even mean? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. He shows up at Frank's frat, and who is there as well but Andrew, and they go upstairs and they're like, hey, Andrew's like, hey, by the way, like
his name's not, he's never referred to as Andrew in the book. It's
I'm calling him Andrew because that's what he was referred to in the first book.
Sure, but if you only read this book, you're not gonna know what the fuck Andrew is.
Okay, he is called Andrew sometimes.
That's
how I wrote that down.
I would not have known.
I didn't know how to spell Eversham.
It's what? There's only like
Be
one way to
quiet.
spell Eversham.
Be quiet. Again, no
Eversham.
thoughts, just vibes during
Okay,
this whole
I'm
book.
just saying, I didn't know his name was
Spelling
Andrew.
includes thoughts. Anyway, so Val and Eversham roll on up, and Eversham is like, yo, we found the kidnappers, except that we found one of them dead in the fucking house. So
awkward.
that's mysterious. Oh no. And then they go up and they find that Frank has been kidnapped and his apartment is ransacked. And then they find a stack of letters in his cousin's in Frank's apartment that implies Effie may be the secret heir to some sort of fortune. And this is where like we found out Effie was raised by like this really strict, I don't know, Anglican
Vicar,
priest and his wife. Yeah, vicar, that thing. They have a million words. And you know,
yeah, they do.
Establish there's so many words. Anything we want. God man and his wife, who were super strict, but she was like dropped off in an inn near Brighton, and it's like implied that like she was like actually the bastard child of like some sort of like rich guy. Yeah. And so she may like be a secret heir. So she wouldn't be like inheriting any estates or anything, but she probably has like a, what did they call it? It was like, it's like a thing, like there was like a word that they used.
Onto?
No. Like
a bequest.
Yeah, like
a bequest.
Something like that. And they're like, oh, the plot thickens.
Yeah. So can I also just say, so at this point, I can't remember. I guess he already talked to Langham, but
No, he hasn't yet. No, they're about to go.
Okay.
Because Tate was like, Tate implicates Langham by being like, yeah, I saw him. I was for no reason whatsoever outside Effie's house watching it at dawn one day.
Right.
And I saw Langham leaving at dawn one day, like looking very smug.
Yeah. And I was sure, like, at this point, I was like, all right, either this whole thing is like one big Frank Effie, like, kink thing that they've, like, set up, or it's the good old classic Schitt's Creek related romantic fake out, which, let me explain, it's when you, like, see a man with, like, a woman, it's like, oh my gosh, like, he's having an affair, like, it's not his, like, wife or girlfriend or whatever, like, who is that woman, like, he kissed her on the cheek, oh my god, they hugged, and it turns out that it's like his relative of some sort, like, that's why they're together. And I was like, oh my god,
not Schitt's Creek, that's like way before.
I know, I just most recently saw it in Schitt's Creek, like, whatever. But so that's what I was like, all right, Effie is like related to some nobility, we got Langham looking suspicious and going to see her, he's definitely going to be her like half brother or something, like, that's what's going on.
No,
I know it wasn't that.
Yeah,
like,
no, I know. I'm informing our listeners that is a good theory, but wasn't in fact the case. So now Val is like, fuck this shit. Langham is suspicious as shit. Time to go confront him. And if I happen to need to beat him up, you know, that not exactly a bad thing, because I still want to beat him up for talking about Caro's tits that one time.
Yeah. He's like, I should have just beat him up when I didn't even have a written up. Yeah. When I only had one reason. Like, yeah.
So he rolls up and he's like, what the fuck? You said you didn't know Effie, but you definitely did. You were at his house. And Langham is like, bro, I am not a narc, but I guess because she's been kidnapped, I will spill some tea. She was asking me for legal help because I'm a duke and, like, you know, I have more power and can, like, look things up more easily. And I was looking for her birth parents because she suspected she'd inherited something and wanted to know what happened. If, like, the real, like, the like heir already inherits, like, whether she still, like, gets her inheritance, and, like, legal advice. And, like, he's basically like, yeah, it was enough money to kill over. So they're like, oh my god, Effie could be dead.
And then Caro, like, almost passes out from that because, like, the way he says it, and they give her, like, whiskey.
Yeah, that she drinks the whiskey and she's like, oh, like, she just, like, gags. And then she's like, what the fuck? I saw you drink this whole thing, like, whole. And he's like, like, I've spent the last decade building up an immunity to iocane.
Yeah. Also, another way that I'm sure at least that Langley is going to be the hero of the next book is that we learn that he has, quote, overlong hair. And, like, there's no reason to give a historical character that unless they're going to be, like, the bad boy, like, hero of the next one. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he's also supposed to be, like, a slut. But also, like, he meets Flora and they immediately have enemies to lovers vibes. And so it's like...
No. Well, there was an off-screen... They'd met before. Like, there was an off-screen interaction that I bet we're going to hear about next book.
Oh, but the rest of the characters, I don't think, know that.
No, like, we know because they, like, allude. He's like, it's you again.
Oh yeah,
you're the one who was rummaging in, like, wherever and, like, said you didn't tell me who you really were. So, like, that definitely something happened. Steamy makeout session in the stacks, as it were.
Yeah. So the plot has thickened, And we get that Flora and Langham enemies to lovers set up when like the men come to like update Kate and Caro on the case. And as of the recording on this episode, maybe it'll be different by the time this episode comes out. We don't know what we have not confirmed that Langham and Flora will be the couple of the next book, but I think almost definitely like for this is just how the romance book goes. Like,
right.
That's how like for sure. Anyway, They arrive and they're like, oh, well, if it was enough money to kill for, we should look into this. Like, we should look into conservative politicians who would like be ashamed to have an actress attached to their like family name. Like, they like, this is again one of those things, the same thing where the dad were like, as I was listening, I was like, yeah, makes sense.
No.
Checks out. I'm following.
No.
And afterward, like trying to explain it, I'm like, I don't know how to explain that.
I immediately was like, why are you being so convoluted? All it needs to be is someone who wouldn't want to give up money. Like, it's money. What? And then lo and behold, I was not fooled. Like, I was like, what are you talking about? It's like convoluted, like.
I mean, this whole book is convoluted. Like that's the vibes of this book is like one convoluted plan after the other. Like that's why there's no room for angst, because like there's already like all these wheels turning. Like they can't add emotional angst as well.
Yeah.
And Flora is, for some reason, really good at looking up family crests. So she's found all the noblemen with foxes. And they're like, well, Effie grew up in Brighton, so it's probably someone that lives near there. So then they find out that it is, in fact, Lord Tate, who lives near Brighton and also has a family crest with... Or no.
Yeah. Well, first Langley...
No, it's not Lord Tate. I'm sorry. It's some other guy.
Oh, yeah. What the fuck is his name?
Oh, fuck.
G. Something with the G. Anyway, they clear Langley of it because they have the whole like tension between like Laura and Langley.
Langham, not Langham. You keep saying Langham.
I'm pretty sure it's Langley. I think you keep saying Langham.
No, I finally wrote it down. I finally written it down. I finally reached the point where I wrote it down.
I wrote it down multiple times and it's Langley.
I've written it down multiple times now too because I realized he was going to be a main character. Anyway, there's a second man, the man that lives near Brighton, who is also some sort of nobility. That's his family crest. And so they're like, oh my God. And he's and he's a super conservative politician. He's definitely involved.
And we skipped over, we basically already covered this. The only important thing is that Val has gone and saw his father again. This is when they have their like, he confronts him and the dad is like, I'm sorry. But the second direct, this is what I was saying with the Pride and Prejudice thing. The dad is like, you cannot expect me to rejoice at the inferiority of their connections, surely. And I was like, like that's.
All right, Lady Catherine.
Yeah. No, that's Mr. Darcy. That's in the first proposal.
Oh.
You cannot expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of the connection. They make Val like, they don't have Val say that. They work it in there, but it's like they had to split him into like two. It's like Mr. Darcy and then like really mean Mr. Darcy.
Yeah. Okay. So next thing that happens is they get married. Their friend has been kidnapped, but it's okay. They are getting married. It's a small wedding. And then on the way home, we have another fight / miscommunication that lasts all of like 5 minutes, where on the carriage ride home, like Val is like on fucking cloud 9 and Caroline is like, I just like want to let you know, like, I know this is not like a love match. And so like, I don't mind if you cheat. But also, like, she's like, I would definitely mind if you cheated. But like,
she's like trying to protect herself.
And Val is like, what the fuck? I would never cheat on. And we've gotten this multiple times throughout the book that even if it wasn't a love match, Val has always been like, once I get married, like I'm staying
right, because the dad,
like, even if it wasn't Caro,
yeah, the dad's like, oh, you don't actually have to change your life that much, like. And then Val's like, who do you think I am? The dad's like, yeah, I know you're chill. Like, we're just testing you. It was just a test. It was just a what's the quote I'm looking for? It was just a, I don't know, scare tactic.
No. The two dogs barking at each other. Yeah. So they get married. And so they're at the wedding breakfast. Caro's like, ooh, I said something I shouldn't have. And Val is like hurt. And then like immediately they just like look at each other, and then they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, Eversham's like talking to Val, and he's like, wow, I've never seen a quarrel resolved with just a glance. Like,
But before they resolve it, Val is like, why did I get so pissed? Like, why can't I control myself around her? I don't understand. What are these feelings? Complex emotions. I don't get them.
And Caro's like, wow, I like never really wanted a wedding, but like now I kind of wish that I like planned it so much because it's like so special. Like I can't think why. It's just like so special.
No reason for that at all.
Yeah, I just like flower
vibes.
petals. I just like
vibes.
Flowers. Just, you know.
I got a new dress. It's really nice.
And then we finally get some Bridgerton reparations, getting them in a storage closet. We don't really get Bridgerton reparations, but like they do both go to storage closet, and I think they kiss, right? At the very least, they kiss. That's where they have this like a more of a conversation.
I have no memory of
Okay, I don't remember what happened. All I have is, yes, get them in a storage closet. Finally, Bridgerton reparations.
All right, well, good to know. You'll be happy to know. And Val is like, guess what? Where we're going for a honeymoon, because I know you and I know that your number one priority is sleuthing at all times. So we're going to go to Brighton for our honeymoon to do some sleuthing.
Yes.
And she's like, yes, fuck yes. And then they go back to his house and she meets his cook, and his cook is like, oh yeah, like Val's favorite foods are from your cook. It's like this pudding. And she's like, so like his favorite, he's been eating like my food this entire time. She's like, please just punch. She's like,
and even
great.
Yeah, even more importantly, like not just Val, but like his dad too. Because at one point Val's like, my dad's come a long way, but I'm not quite to the point of like admitting that my wife knows how to cook.
Yeah. And that all my dad's favorite foods like are recipes from my wife.
Yeah, which is like crazy to consider. Then you like fast forward another 100 years and suddenly it's like, you know, would have been like improper to not know how to cook.
Yeah,
just like weird, the changing standards, of sexism.
Ludwig the cat is dropped off at Val's house, and it's immediate enemies.
Val doesn't like him.
Wait, we got a cat pun here.
Yes.
Val is like, the cat being here is catastrophic.
Yeah, it's a disaster of cat. And then he's like, oh God, he was so far gone. He was punning.
Yeah. He's like worried that the cat is gonna cock block him. And then they take a little cat nap together.
Well, he's like, he knew better than to come between a woman and her cat. Because first I was like, he doesn't like Ludwig, like red flag, but no. And I was just confused. Oh, this is another print. Like we find out that Ludwig and I don't know why I'm saying Ludwig. I'm gonna say it like the Americans do, all right, because I'm American. Ludwig and Val, sorry, met prior to this at quote Val's house in the Lake District. Pemberley.
Oh yeah, it was at the in the first book. So after they wake up from their little
she's like,
cat
I
nap,
hope you're not sorry. I just have a lot written on this. He's like, I hope you're not jealous of the cat, Valentine. Of course I'm not. He lied. Yeah.
Anything else? Any other quotes you would like to share?
Go ahead. They wake up.
Okay, they wake up from their cat nap. They have sex for the first time. She's like this. We get the classic like historical heroine where he starts undressing and she's like, "Oh my god, a naked man!" And normally like I don't mind it, and sometimes I even like it. But for some reason this time I was like,
yeah, it was more than usual.
29. Like Caro would never, like it just felt out of character for her to be like this woman sees dead bodies all day.
Right. And that's like the overall vibes I got of like, I just cannot imagine any of these people having sex because they're just so like, they're never nudes. Honestly, that's if there's any book that I could believe some of the characters were never nudes, it would be this one. Like,
no, I don't even know, but I'm saying I don't think Caro, for me, it didn't make sense that Caro was like the like shrinking virgin stereotype. Like the fact that she's not like, yeah, let's get naked. Woohoo.
Right.
Like the fact that like Val starts to take his pants off and she's like, what the fuck? You know, it's very much like it's that. And normally I don't mind it, but for some reason it fell out of character. Maybe it's also because she's 29 and I'm just like, all right, this bitch is almost 30. Like I understand it's historical, but like chill out.
Well, I mean, but still, she wouldn't have had like any more exposure than, yeah.
I know. I don't know. Normally, I don't mind it.
No, I agree. But I agree. Like it's like technically out of character, but like in character with the rest of the vibes I got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She does say that she trusts him when they're having sex, which is important because she hasn't trusted him before. This whole time, however, I'm like, these two are having sex. Your friend and your cousin have been kidnapped. They are potentially dead. We have been told this on numerous occasions. And you like, I understand it's your honeymoon. I understand you're going to Brighton the next day. Oh, they go to Brighton on the train. So it's definitely the Victorian era.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Solution. Problem solved.
Yeah.
I was like, guys, your cousin has been stabbed and he's like bleeding out somewhere.
Yeah. We have this like thing of like yeah, I guess like learning to trust your instincts is like tied in here because there's something about like Kira's like, oh, I like it when you lay on top of me. Like it's, so primitive. I bet you think I'm a hypocrite. Somehow she's like, I bet you think I'm a hypocrite because I think women should have rights, but also I like sex. Like it's very convoluted. And then he's like, oh, but that's
Again,
like
this whole book is convoluted. Like it's one big convoluted scheme.
Yeah. And then he's like, oh, you need to learn to trust your instincts or whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, they head on over to Brighton on the train. They meet the inn owner, and the inn is like, they're like, listen, you probably don't remember this baby that was dropped here like over 20 years ago. And the inn owner was like, bitch, do I ever? Yeah. Of course I remember the rando baby. And she's like, the baby was definitely the child of the Earl. The baby definitely had a big inheritance. That's like the big rumor around town. The new Earl is a dick. And they're like, okay, confirmed. New Earl, definitely the culprit, like 100%. And they're like, gotta go back to London to continue to investigate. So I'm like, good. Like, at least, like, they're not staying on that. Like, you deserve a honeymoon, but, like, maybe not while your friends are in danger. Like, glad you're going back to London. Caro's like, we gotta go. Yeah. We gotta take the train back. And Val, meanwhile, is, Lord Croydon. That's the man. Lord Croydon is the new Earl.
When Val starts suddenly having second thoughts about like not letting Caro like interview suspects to like protect their feelings, he's like, I'm damn tired of protecting the fragile feelings of misogynists over at the expense of Caro's. And I'm like, all right, good. Yeah, doesn't really stop him, but like
I mean, he kind of does. He kind of like allows her to stick around, but also he has before that, like they get back to their house and the cat Ludovic has obviously been terrorizing everyone this whole time, like as is his nature. And but Val is also like, he's walking around and he's like, wow, like Caro's stuff is in my house, like her clothes are in my closet, and like there's even like a dollhouse filled with reenactments of murder scenes.
But who was he to judge? Because he had a boxing room too, and I'm like, you know what?
No, I like this,
but those are not on the same level.
It's like, I don't know, a boxing room feels a little bit more normal, than a dollhouse. But where is it? That's definitely like a historical thing. That like there were dollhouses filled with like that was like a hobby that like a popular hobby.
Really?
Like, I don't know whether it's this like
reenacting murder scenes time period
or like particularly like crimes, like dollhouses filled with crimes.
I've never heard
like miniature crime scenes. I have absolutely heard of that. I've definitely like I saw it in a documentary or something. I read it in a book. That's definitely a thing that people did. Like that's not just like a weird Caro thing. Like people definitely recreated crime scenes. And in fact, there was this lady, I think this was in the 20th century, but I'm pretty sure there was like some famous crime that like was recreated by these enthusiasts, and then like it was like a cold case, and then like 20 years later this like detective, she like went in and like looked at the recreation and was like, hang on, this is definitely how the crime was committed, and like solved the crime based on like this little like she was the one that like pioneered. She was the one that was like, we should take pictures of crime scenes. Like we need to document everything that's in the crime scene so that things don't get so like, and we need to like keep it clean, like people can't just be stomping all over the place. Like she was the one that did it, and it was like based on like she was like in that crowd of like people who like made crime scenes out of dollhouses.
Nice. Wait, so who had the accurate reenactment of it?
I don't know. Maybe it was her. I don't know. I just know it was like it started with like she solved the case because she made like miniatures of the crime scene, and then she like pioneered the whole like, hey, we need to like keep crime scenes secure.
That seems like something so obvious, but I guess it's I mean, it gives me similar vibes as the like not washing your like doctors not washing their hands. And like now it's like it seems so obvious to like keep it clean, quote unquote. But I guess like same thing with crime scenes. Like it would take someone like suggesting that for people to be like, oh, let's not be grubby and like like let in tourists. Like I remember I there was this one like historic like crime, I don't know, I just like listened to a few episodes of it, and they were talking about how like there was this like murder scene and it was in this small town, so it was like a big attraction for like miles around, so like all these people like just came and like walked around the house like looking at this like
it's like stomped all over all the evidence,
right? And I think they technically were like, don't come in here, but like no one was enforcing it, and they just like
like ruined everything. Anyway, so that lady, I'll try to find like an article about her. But you can think that lady, I think it was in like the 20th century though. I think it was like well after this that like was instituted. It took them a while to finally realize that. Anyway, Caro has a murder dollhouse. Val is like very, very sweetly warm about the fact that all her shit is in his house. He's like very happy about it. And now they go visit Lord Croydon, the new dickish Earl. And he's definitely suspicious.
He's a dick. He's like talking about, yeah, he's like, of course I didn't want like my association with Effie known, like her dad, like my uncle, like the only good member. He's like, blood will out, you know, and but like of course not with me. Like of course my dad and me are like the only good members of our family. But like obviously she would go down like the bad path or whatever. Oh, what I enjoyed was that like when Val and Eversham are walking up, Val's like, all right, dude, like make sure to be cool. Don't tell them you're a cop. Like just don't tell them. And Eversham's like, who do you think I am? And then they get to the door and like give their cards. And Val's like, oh, wow, he has cards that don't say he's a cop. Like they just say Mr. Eversham.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
And Andrew's like, yeah, dude, this is my fucking job. Like I do know how to do this. I am very good at this. Like there's a reason I was promoted last month.
I mean, I feel like Val's like a defense to that would be like, yeah, well, you're the one who's saying that like you guys are shit. Like that's all I've ever seen. So, like,
yeah. Andrew's like, bro, like I literally solved a serial killer case last book. Like I got this.
Do you even read, bro?
Like you were there, bro.
I'm 19. I never fucking learned how to read.
Very much get those vibes.
Yeah,
for sure. Anyway, so they're going back. They both Eversham and Val agree that like Lord Croydon's suspicious, and then Val is like, listen, don't make fun of me, but like I promised that we'd update Caro before like we continued the investigation. And Andrew was like, duh, like obviously we have to update our wives. I'm not an idiot. Like Kate would fucking stab me if like we didn't update them. He's like, of course. And I just love these two men are just such simps. Like they're just fully on the same page. They're like, yes, we're scared of our wives.
No, his specific thing is she'll make me sleep in the best guest room. Possibly. Like, all right, so it's not the worst guest room. It's not even like the medium guest room. At least you get the best guest room.
And meanwhile, their wives are like, we are not just like sitting around eating cake. We are sitting around eating cake and also hosting a book club and investigating. And who just so happens to be at the book club but Lady Tate, who happens to be like they're like, oh yeah, you were in Brighton last week. Like we just like, Caro's like, we just like came back from Brighton from our honeymoon. And Lady Tate is like, oh, I wasn't in fucking Brighton. Like, what do you mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't have a sister that lives in Brighton.
No, I haven't seen her in 3 years. Yeah.
They're like, Lord Tate's alibi is gone. Caro and Kate go investigate the house that Tate bought for Effie when he wanted her to be his mistress. So Caro and Kate find the house and they see Lord Croydon there. They see him like walking out and they're like, oh my God, he's totally keeping Effie there. He's totally like knows that we're on to him because like we just like spoke to him and like accused him. We gotta go. And so like they're like, we gotta break in the house. But they're like, we are actually not at all good at breaking into houses. So we're actually gonna go in through the front door. And they roll up to the front door and Carol's like, oh my God, Kate grew up here. So she just really wants to see the
we
house
grew up
again.
here. They pretend to be sisters. It's
Like,
yeah.
And the footman is like the fake footman who turns out to be the kidnapper that killed the other one who threw him in the river. But he's like, I don't know. Like, I can't let you in. And they're like, oh, please. And then like the housekeeper shows up and she's like, just let him on the ground floor. Like, they don't have to go upstairs. Like, it's cool.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So they go in and then Lord Tate appears and is like, I know you. And they get captured and they get put in a room. And who is there?
A body. Not a dead body. They really fake you out. They're like, oh my God, we thought it was a dead body.
Rachel, I don't understand how for a moment you were like, oh yes, that's the dead body. I was like, they see a body on the bed and I was like, it's gonna be Frank and he's gonna recover. Like there's no angst in this book. Absolutely not. By this point, I was like, Manda Collins would not do me like that. Absolutely
He
not.
could be like one of the henchmen. Like who knows? But anyway, he's been stabbed, but he's holding on. He's like delirious naturally, which I feel like is not something you recover from in this time period, but like whatever.
Yes,
he will.
do for romance. He recovers for romance reasons because Frank, it turns out Frank was clobbered over the head at the beginning. So he was already kind of wobbly. And then he gets kidnapped and then he tried to escape and like he found Effie and they were going to get out together, but then like they get caught. And so he got stabbed. And so like Effie's in a separate room and Frank's lying stabbed on the bed.
And so Speaking of Chekhov's gun, Caro's like, it's like pacing. Caro felt the weight of her pistol resting against her thigh. She has a pistol. They never use it. She has a gun. But instead, they're like, okay, what's a great plan? We need to like get their attention. We'll scream, pretend that Frank is attacking us. So they do that. And then the henchman walks in. They like hit him over the head with a fire shovel or something.
Yeah.
And tie him up just like immediately.
They escape, they go find Effie. Like they found Effie.
Mm-hmm.
No problems. They open a few doors. They steal the footman's keys. They open a few doors and they're like, oh my God, hey Effie, what's up?
Yeah.
Like, we're here to rescue you.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Val and Andrew are outside. They've showed up at the house.
Can I just say that it's apparently the time of day is described as, I meant to Google this, but the gloaming, that time when the last light of day casts an otherworldly blue sheen on the world. So Twilight, I never heard it.
No, the gloaming is a word that I've heard before.
Twilight dusk. Yeah, that's what it means.
Yeah, it's like dusk. But it is a specific time. For example, today's gloaming was 7:47 p.m.
Oh, really? That's bizarre. Weird.
Yeah,
really?
Twilight dusk.
Sunset is that late?
No,
I guess sunset's before.
It's after the sunset, before like the light fully disappears.
Wait, how could it be at 7:47 when tomorrow it's at 7:32?
I don't know what to tell you. I searched gloaming.
Oh, that's sunset. Never mind. Sorry, I already got.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, I'm glad we're on the same page. The gloaming. You've learned a new word today, listeners. Rachel's learned a new word.
Our evil genius villains are standing on the front stoop having a loud argument about how they've each fucked up. And all that Val and Everett should have to do is like hang out on the corner of the building and like peep around and eavesdrop a little bit to like hear all they need to know.
And they attack and subdue them because they're stupid enough to confess everything on the steps of the house. And then everyone is rescued. They all team up, like they've subdued Tate and Croydon, and then they open the door, and Kate and Caro are there with like Effie and Frank, and they're like, "Oh hey
they're
guys,
like, oh good, we did want to ride home.
Like this is great. Frank needs a doctor. Otherwise everyone's cool, but like Frank right now, Frank needs a fucking doctor. Frank is gonna die. I don't think you understand. The man smells. He has fucking sepsis. Like he needs a doctor.
Oh.
Never fear though. We fast forward like a month later. It's all wrapped up.
Throughout this, they kept repeating how like the villains won't hang because they're peers. And so I thought that was set up like to go along with the theme of like pretty low stakes, like they're not sending anyone to the gallows. But no, like this has been throughout the book, but the last time it's repeated like a sentence later, it's like, oh, but Mick the henchman, like he was killed last week, he's dead. Like,
oh yeah, the footman's dead, but the peers, they don't die. Manda Collins is like, this is the reality. I don't know what you want me to do about it. Like this is just how the world
there's
works.
Like a little commentary on like, oh, this isn't fair or whatever. But I guess he did actually kill someone. Mick has also killed someone separately. So I guess like,
yes, technically Tate and Croydon didn't kill anyone yet.
Yeah,
they just kidnapped.
They were planning to, but they didn't.
But yeah, epilogue. Everything is it's basically the epilogue is just like wrapping things up, but like specifically like the bulk of the epilogue is wrapping things up between Val and Ludwig, in which like it's established once again that Ludwig is enemies with everyone. Yes. And Val is like, he and I have a truce. Like, we get it. Like, I do not interrupt his cuddle time, and he does not interrupt my sex time. And like, this is how it's going to go.
Yeah. I just really enjoyed the imagery of like, so we start out with a conversation and we don't know where they are. It's just, you picture they're probably like, sitting or like in bed, and it's like,
the dollhouse.
Caro leaned onto Val, causing a ripple of water to cascade over the edge of the bathtub. And then, like, the cat comes up and, like, disappears between the edge. And Val's like, he's drinking the water again, isn't he? So the sound of rapid slurping made the question moot. And then it's just like, and the cat hasn't actually done anything. Like, come on. And he's like, the truth is, Caroline, I would endure any number of cats, dogs, and hedgehogs if it meant I got to spend the rest of my life with you. So that's cute.
Baby.
So, yeah, things are,
Anyway, but yeah, the epilogue is like almost solely dedicated to like, where is Ludwig now? And, like, so, what is his life like?
Yeah, it's good. It's all good. Yeah, but this brings me back to what the letters about the other man, the Frank Effie letters.
Oh, okay.
What was up with that?
I think it was the fact that Effie was like trying to investigate her past, and Frank didn't know about it. And like Frankie like didn't know the whole story, so he just saw her. He saw her hanging out with Langham, and he's like, "Oh, you're leaving me for Langham." Like I think there was like he thought something else was going on, whereas like it was just Effie trying to discover her past. That's what I think it was. But it's never really like, this is why Frank wrote the letter. which is interesting because everything else is wrapped up. Anyway,
Nice.
we ended on a cat, and now we're rolling right back into the Catskill.
Yowling right back in. I would say off the charts.
Really fucking high. I don't know whether it's as high as like Ice Planet.
Yeah, it's interesting because there was a lot of like cats, but like not that much cat vibes.
Yeah, what do we think? So we established Val is a dog.
Definitely.
Yeah. What do we think Caro is?
I don't know. Not very cat-like.
Mm-mm.
Although, well, are cats impulsive? Would we call cats
Mm-mm.
impulsive? No. Like a cat, if a cat wants to like knock off your vase off the table, it's gonna like look at you a few times first, like make sure it has an audience. I wouldn't call it impulsive. It's like, planned.
I feel like Caro's like a hamster or something. A hamster that like is constantly escaping its cage and like doing parkour around the house.
Yeah,
you know what I
and
mean?
lives more than 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, an immortal hamster. Yeah, we did have Ludwig, and the book did end with Ludwig. Like Manda Collins was like, the most important thing that I need to wrap up about this book is
It's a wacky cat.
Is Ludwig the cat.
The wacky cat.
So
cat solving crimes. Cool cats and kittens.
That's what I want. That book. Give me cat solving crimes. The adventures of Catlock.
Catter sitting.
Balls.
Yeah. All right. 3,
okay.
2, 1,
8. Wow.
Hey.
Look at that. Look at us. Agreeing. I'm gonna write. Stop making these weird noises because then I have to edit them out.
I was trying to make that like,
Yeah, but then you just like kept going, like
because I didn't get it the first time.
My artist.
Well, yeah, exactly. You're welcome. It's professional level. Some people have to pay for this,
Leave me alone. Get out. Get out.
But
on your way out, tell our listeners where they can find us.
You keep bobbing this off on me.
You got to be quick. You got to do it.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Gmail at We Read It One Night,
TikTok.
at gmail.com for the latter. TikTok at We Read It One Night, and also Twitter at We Read It Podcast.
And also, if you have the ability to rate and or review podcasts where you're listening, please do that for our podcast. We've gotten some great reviews.
It's
recently.
always it's always such a rush when we're like on the charts, even though most of the time we'll like go on Chartable and it'll say like you were on the charts. It's we won't tell you when, but like you were on the US book charts and also Sweden and also
you're out.
Yeah. But so if you want to keep us on there,
I feel like fucking like a Project Runway contestant where Heidi Klum is like, you are out. Like one day you're in and the next day you're out. Like I feel like that's what Chartable is doing to me with fucking the rankings. But we did actually get a number the last time we looked for Apple Podcasts.
US, Australia, and Sweden, I think. It was like I
was impressed. So thank you,
Sweden.
We already knew we had a lunch. I mean, thank you, US listeners, but we already knew you were out there. So like shout out to our Australian and Swedish listeners.
Yeah.
Godspeed, comrades.
Godspeed, comrades.
That's ironic.